Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome to Sangha Live, the daily meditation series. This week, again, with Caverly Morgan. I'm Janice, and I'm here to welcome you before we get started and introduce Caverly. A couple things about Sangha Live. This platform has been around for years. For the last 5 years, Sangha Live has offered free to all weekly meditation sessions every Sunday led by teachers all over the world. And in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Sangha Live has met the need by launching this daily meditation series. Caverly Morgan has been offering this series for the last few weeks now and will continue to do so. So welcome back if you've been with us for a while now. And if you're joining for the first time, just a couple things to know. You can greet this beautiful community in the sidebar. And I wanted to give a couple tech updates for the folks returning. So one of the people behind the scenes, her name is Jake, and I got to do a tech check this morning. Thank you for those who joined in to test out your cameras. Last week, we were having consistent issues getting folks on screen. After Caverly leads a meditation, there's a question and answer session where you can either type in a question or actually have a dialogue with her on screen. So here's the update for those of you who've been with us. Chrome, the browser, there's still some issues going on with Chrome that we haven't gotten to the bottom of yet. So for today, if you have the ability to use Safari, if you have a Mac as your computer, using Safari is actually being the most successful for folks, which is ironic because normally we don't recommend that. But for today, if you can use Safari, please do. If you're on a PC, you'll have to use Chrome or maybe Firefox. Just make sure those are up to date. And then we also have been finding that if you're on your phone and you're using the Crowdcast app, that seems to be working for people as well. So again, if you have the ability this morning to use Safari, it seems to be best for getting folks on camera. And great. So before I introduce Caverly, one other thing about Sangha Live, getting the support this morning from Jake is just one of the many things that's going on in the background. And this platform, the support of Jake and others working in the background, it's all made possible through donations. So please consider clicking on the green button just below me and donating if you can. This is called Dana, this practice of generosity and mutual support. So really greatly appreciate it if you can support the platform. And now I just want to briefly introduce Caverly Morgan. Caverly Morgan is a meditation teacher. She's been teaching awareness practice for the last 2 decades. Her training includes being a monk for 8 years in a silent Zen monastery. She has launched the nonprofit called Peace in Schools, located in Portland, Oregon, that is offering mindfulness practice to teens in the public school system out there, as well as educators. She also is the creator of Presence Collective, a beautiful and growing collective of meditation teachers offering practice into the world. She's also an author, working on her own book and having just released a children's book. So Caverly is many things, and I would love to bring her on now and pass it over to her. Good morning.
Hi, Janice. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate that. I want to also give a shout out to Janice for doing so much work on the back end. It can be stressful, as you can imagine, to have technology suddenly not working the way that you're hoping it will work. And Janice has really brought so much willingness to the table as we try to figure out how to more easily get folks on screen to engage after the meditations. So Janice, thank you. And yes, thank you, friends, for your support. And speaking of support and how support for practice it just seems to be rippling right now. And I appreciate how many things are being offered online. I want to acknowledge that a very dear friend of mine and a Presence Collective community member teacher named David Perrin will be offering practice today through Presence Collective. So Janice, in a moment, will provide a link for that. And I wanted you all to know about it. Dave, I've known Dave over 25 years, and he's been teaching in the Shambhala tradition, practicing and teaching in the Shambhala tradition, but is really opening up his offerings. They're very accessible. He's a lovely teacher. And I just wanted you to know, many of you have joined my Wednesday evening Sangha gathering through Presence Collective. So I wanted you to know about Dave's offering. It's today at 4 p.m. Pacific time. So thank you. Again, I'm just incredibly glad to be here. I say again because I do recognize that that's my felt sense every time I show up to be with you all. So, got some fresh flowers for you, some lilacs from our yard, other things in bloom at our home. So I'm celebrating our gathering and very, very happy you've shown up. Thank you. So let's begin this morning with a sit, and know that, so we'll move straight into a half an hour sit. If you've not joined this before, we'll move into a half an hour sit, and then we'll move into an opportunity for engagement, and we will be prioritizing folks that have gone through this test so that we can have some smooth, hopefully, interactions with Crowdcast today. Again, welcome. Thank you for being here. Let's begin by turning the attention to the breath. And in this moment, with each inhalation, visualize the breath entering the body and moving deeper and deeper through the body. So maybe at first you can sense the breath filling the collarbone area and then releasing. On the next breath, feel it dropping down more deeply into the chest. And then inhaling into the mid-torso. Inhaling to the abdomen, the low back. Inhaling to the pelvic bowl. Inhaling to the upper legs. Inhaling to the knees. Now the lower legs and the feet. Inhaling through the upper arms and the elbows. Lower arms, wrists, and hands. And then inhaling into the neck and the head. And simply notice what the conditioned mind is up to today. Start by just noticing the quality or the tone of what the mind is up to. And without judgment, simply notice, are there emotions that are linked to what the conditioned mind is up to? And then drop beyond just the label of a quality or tone and notice some specifics. What's your self-talk in this moment? What is the voice of the conditioned mind asserting, suggesting, saying to you? Simply notice and let go. And now, rather than giving the attention to the breath, to the movement of the breath, the dropping down of the breath, or to the witnessing of the conditioned mind, or to the emotions, now draw the attention back to your own being. And in the same way that we drop the attention down with the breath through the body, sink the attention down and through your being. Just that direct experience of who you are when you're at ease, happy, peaceful. Not identified with the conditioned mind. Not consumed with worry, planning, chasing, fixing, trying to change, judging. But just being. If this feels difficult to access, no worries. You might bring in the power of imagination. Just imagine a moment. Call upon a moment in your life that it felt easy to simply be. Perhaps you are out in nature, resting in a hammock, sitting quietly, having tea with a friend. Some moment where it felt easeful to simply be. The conditioned mind usually asserts that that had something to do with the content of our experience. Well, I really love that friend, or that natural setting is the only place I could have that experience. It had to do with that little plot of land. Explore directly in your own experience whether that's actually so. Whether this experience of being is bound to content. Is not your very being accessible now? How could your very being not be in reach? How can you move closer to yourself? Just allowing the attention to sink more and more deeply into your own being. As if you entered an elevator. You're dropping down floor after floor and deeper levels of your own being. resting in your own being. Resting as your own being. Know where you have to go. Nothing you have to do. And no one you have to be. All right, friends. Thank you. Let's see if we can bring on the screen a friend who tried to come on screen last week and who was able to participate in the test this morning. As Janice is setting that up, a reminder to please support this platform by clicking on the link below. It only exists due to your support. So please, if you're able. Thank you. So I believe John was first in the queue. And I'm just looking at the sidebar while I wait for John to come on. Looks like some folks are having some connection issues. I hope that worked out. Good morning or afternoon or evening, Maria. Yes. Hello, John.
Hi. Good to see you finally.
Good to see you finally. We did it. Thank you, John. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, it's so great. It's so great the way these sort of intimacies can be built over this strange medium.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, it really is.
But I loved that meditation. It was very powerful. Particularly the metaphor of the elevator was very helpful.
It's kind of an interesting way to think of our own being, isn't it?
Yeah. And it helped me. But it was interesting. I found it very difficult to rest in that notion of being.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately started to, attempt to, it was almost like people were getting on the elevator or pushing buttons upstairs. It was taking me back up, and started to label even aspects of, my being is judgmental or generous, or, so I think that's one of the real challenges of how do you rest in that place, and I think what you do with that, at least that glimmer that you have.
Yeah, and this reminds me of something you typed in last week that we didn't get to, John. This recognition that one way to sum it up could be, it is so easy to identify with the conditioned mind. It is so easy to be hooked by whatever that conversation is. So note, just as an FYI, that we could have not even acknowledged what was happening in the conditioned mind. We could have just gone straight to this experience of dropping into being. One of the reasons I started with that today, and I think it's Kira or Kyra, maybe Kira or Kyra. I saw a question about meditating, or is this meditation or is this teaching? The answer is yes. So, because it is useful in meditation for us to recognize that it's not necessary to push away the activity of the conditioned mind, that we can see it for what it is from the experience of resting in our own being. And that's one of the reasons we began with that as a practice, because what you're describing is important. You have, like we do, a conditioned tendency to make being separate from the activity of the conditioned mind. There's all this stuff with the conditioned mind. And just as someone was typing in, like, well, I can't focus on any of that. I just want to meditate. As if meditation is an escape from the activity of the conditioned mind, as if it's dualistic. In the same way that it's not dualistic that there are teachings and meditation. To move into a direct experience of being can, and this is where your glimpses will increase as you continue to practice, can be the seat from which the conditioned mind simply does what it does. And that's an ultimate disidentification process. Many folks, especially I've found who are trained in the Vipassana tradition, their meditation practice ends with an experience of, I am labeling the thoughts. but I see myself as separate from these experiences. So I'm noticing these things, but I'm over here and the experiences are over here. We're speaking of the being that is more like that image of the sky that I know you've been on these calls, so we've been working with this image of this sky. Where else could a storm roll through except for the open sky? The difference with this analogy would be that it's an aware sky. So to me, John, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the glimpse you're naming is actually the glimpse of the recognition of yourself as that awareness that has plenty of room for the activity of the conditioned mind.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right that I saw them. My notion is that they're separate, that I can go to this place that's a place of being, but my daily life is this condition. It's my concepts, my beliefs, my aspirations is all this other sort of separate thing. And so what I was mentioning last week is the fear of leaving that to this other thing rather than what you're saying I'm hearing now is that right.
Yeah, we're going to be in a big tug of war in our practice if we see awareness as separate from all of the activity of the conditioned mind. And you really have to expand that out, right? That means all of the perceptions, all of the emotions, all of that activity. If we see that activity as other than the experience of awareness, then we, by default, will be compelled to want to get rid of all of this other stuff so that we can have an experience of awareness. And what I've recognized in myself as I've watched that temptation throughout my practice is that actually is about control, not liberation. And it leads to a very fragile experience of peace. In order to experience the peace of my own being, I have to have the house just as I want to have it, or I have to be on my own, in my own special place where no one will disturb me, where I can control every aspect of my environment. It's a very, very fragile.
Or you started to say that the awareness that we might feel today was related to a place or a person.
Exactly.
And if that's the only place that you have it, then it's very fragile.
Then what do you do if you're in a COVID crisis
Right.
and you can't go to that special place
Absolutely.
where you get to have this special experience? It's really, really helpful to see that the core of that process is actually, it's something that's fueled by our conditioned tendency for control, not a recognition of our own being. Now, that said, most of us on this path feel compelled to want to go farther because we do know that experience of our own being. We're just confused about how to have it be something that is our default setting.
Yeah.
So there's no harm with getting caught in that conditioned process. We don't need to judge ourselves when we catch ourselves caught in that conditioned process. Simply really helpful to be clear about what's going on. And to be able to say, oh, I'm confusing reality. I'm identified with that which confuses reality right now.
And I think the challenge is ultimately being in both places,
Yes, recognizing that they were never separate in the first place, that the conditioned mind can only arise in this open, vast field of awareness. Mm-hmm. The issue is that we suffer when we think we are that activity of the conditioned mind. Because as soon as we think we are, then it's dualistic. We have to get back to an experience of awareness, and the tug of war begins.
I would think it'd be almost the same when you begin to assume that you are just that awareness, and you ignore all these other things too. Then you're equally, on one leg, I guess.
I couldn't agree more. John, thank you so much.
You.
Good to see you. Thanks. Thanks for coming on.
Nancy's here too.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you for being there, Nancy. Okay, Janice, thank you. I'm so glad that worked. And thanks, friends, for those who came on early to test this out so that we can fix the issues. I'd love to see who else is ready to come on screen. And it looks like there's some questions in the sidebar. Okay, so Kavi, you're waiting to come on screen. Great. Great. So again, apologies, Kira or Kyra. I'm not exactly sure how you say your name. I will get back to your comment in just a moment. Hi, Kavi.
Hey, Caverly. I was able to get it working on my phone.
Great.
Yeah. So how are you doing?
Doing great. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. I'm doing very well too. I'm 21 now, so.
Oh, Kavi, great. Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So my question was like in relation to like this. Just repeat like what I was asking in the past. I wasn't able to get to my question because technical difficulties. However, my question was like, how is one able to what's it called, be able to work with the conditioning when there's so much resistance of like starting something new or committing to something new. And yeah, like where I'm in my practice right now, like I'm actually been committing to new projects and starting new projects at the same time. And it's not like I'm having so much at the same time where it's overwhelming, because it's pretty simple. But like there's that part of me that's like so resistant of wanting to start something. I think that's always the hard part, because the conditioning is like wanting me to be perfect or what I want to, when I always recognize that my mantra has been I value the progress over the results for me. It's just the progress. It's similar to practice to me, because I didn't start like perfectly, or where I am right now, I start somewhere, and that's where I was.
So, Kavi, you're saying you value the process over the content.
Yeah, exactly. I value the process over the context or results.
Yeah.
And I've been noticing conditionally, like even in society, even in like society, like it's always more about the results. However, I feel so the progress is never always talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. We're conditioned to live in a society that, or we live in a society that is conditioned to value content over process, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Kavi, do you have a question this morning that you'd like to articulate, or did you just want to share that? I'm present to other folks who would like to come on as well. So tell me the question that's arising around it. I'd love to hear.
I was asking about your perspective of like how do you handle the resistance, because I know that you had resistance of starting your own book, writing your own book for the past couple of years, and now you're finally starting it. And I just want to hear your perspective of like how has that journey come for you, and also what I can learn from the experience so it can be helpful for me, because I'm already starting a new project already, and I'm already feeling that a lot of resistance. And the best way for me is to recognize I'm open to making mistakes. I just give myself permission.
Yeah, beautiful. Kavi, it's a really important question. Thank you for voicing it. How do we work with resistance? And you're right. For those who are unaware, Kavi went through our Peace in Schools program, graduated, and has moved on, is now 21, apparently. That's incredible to hear. Congratulations. And I appreciate that you're exploring this at this point in your practice. What is your relationship to resistance? Kavi, in my experience, it's very important to look to see, is my resistance arising on behalf of a sense of separate self, a felt experience that I'm separate from life? Or is there, is resistance simply a label I'm giving an experience of recognizing that one way we could talk about it that you might relate to is things just aren't flowing. Things just, it's, you know, have you ever had an experience, Kavi, where it feels like every time you go to do something, it's uphill. It's just not, the doors aren't opening, and it feels like you're pushing against life to try to make something happen.
Yes, it's control.
Yeah. So what'll be very important is for you to just, from this place and practice that I know you're familiar with, this exploration without judgment and this clear seeing, can you inquire into the nature of what is this resistance arising on behalf of? It's one thing if the resistance, for example, is just simply conditioned fear. Oh, you're not good enough to do this new project, Kavi. That might be the self-talk. You're not good enough to do this new project. Then that's really worth examining and seeing through, and not having that voice run your life. And then it'll be interesting to also watch, is it a different type of resistance? Is it, gosh, I keep trying to push against the stream with this, and life isn't supporting that.
Yeah. No, life isn't always going to be supporting that, what I wish for or what I want to go for.
Yeah, because really the ultimate question here, Kavi, is who are we identified with? Are we seeing ourselves as the ego that's trying to push up the stream?
Yeah, I do see like the label of, there's the thing with like, oh, beginner, intermediate, or advanced, like those 3 labels I would use, for example. And some of those labels can be really limiting at times.
Yeah.
Like what I'm progressing over. And even I do know there's a part of me whenever I start, for example, I would start something new and I realize, oh man, I didn't know that was going to happen. Cause I didn't know like this thing randomly happened, and then it's kind of like a signal for me that, oh, I need to stop. Well, no, I just keep going. I try to make it work the best way I can and recognize it's there. That's how I've been doing it. That makes sense.
Thank you for paying attention to the process. You'll have to, I'm sure I'll see you Wednesday night. You'll have to let me know what you notice.
I will. I'll keep you posted. Thank you, Kavi.
Okay. Thank you, Kavi. Thanks for coming on. Friends, we're just about at our time, and I wanted to wrap up with Kira's questions, since we're having a conversation through the chat. Kira, just to name for others, meditation is let my mind rest, not thinking, not following the thoughts. That's difficult with so much input. So the place that I would encourage you to explore is the place in which meditation isn't an experience that is defined by doing. Even I'm trying to rest is a form of doing. Notice that true resting in, for example, unlimited pure consciousness there's no, in that space of resting, there's no, that consciousness is undisturbed by sounds around you, input. If it feels easier in the beginning of your meditation to know that experience, to not have any sound at all, in the beginning of your practice, you could support yourself by trying to create a circumstance where there's no sound, no input. But as you've been hearing in this conversation today, there will be limitation in that. There will be limitation in that you will begin to, the conditioned tendency is to begin to associate the experience of resting or being in a state of meditation as a state that can be disturbed by other experiences, sound, input, conversations next door, your own experience, your activity of the conditioned mind. So I would love to have you come on screen if you're willing. This is a rich, fruitful place for exploration, and it's tricky to do that without actual engagement. So perhaps tomorrow, Kira, you'll be able to come on. I invite you to, please. Friends, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I see that there are more questions. I will read them, potentially bring them into tomorrow's experience. And I would love to have you come on screen tomorrow if you're able.